What's up? It's Matt Plapp. We are on the road still in Florida, but we got enough time for another restaurant expert roundup. We are waiting on fries. I actually just had fries at lunch at a buffalo wing place down here. Justin, tell us who you are. Tell us about the podcast.
Fwamp, fwamp, fwamp. I'm, like you, a guy in this industry, and I come from a radio background. That's what I went to school for. Morning radio specifically because that's where the money was at. I'm not an idiot. So with that said, I wound up working in Hot 97, Sirius XM offices for morning shows and learning the ropes and learning the way around. And then what happened was Pandora came out, Spotify came out, and kind of really killed radio. Everyone was getting consolidated. Guys that were on air were starting to do their own mixing in the background and whatnot. And it just panned out that maybe that wasn't the direction to go in. And at that time, we were working for New York wide receiver Victor Cruz. We started a clothing line. And with that said, this thing did like $340,000 in the first year, which is absurd to hear about a streetwear brand out of nowhere doing something like that. And we went that direction for a while, and I forgot about radio to some extent, but utilizing our connects and contacts to get clothing out to celebrities and whatnot. And now everything comes full circle, and podcasts are on the rise, and people are starting to listen to them. And at some point, we realized that there was kind of a hole in the podcast world for people that were in the restaurant business. And I've been here for 15 years or so. So, I grew up in a restaurant, and you start seeing the inner workings of every single part of it. I mean, there's nothing I haven't done in a restaurant at this point, really. We realized with that gap that there's probably restaurant owners out there that want to listen to the gems that come out of these podcasts. They want to hear maybe some different ways to sell things, and maybe they don't know. Nobody has all the answers unless you've been in a multitude of different restaurants, Yep.
That's exactly where this came from and my podcast came from. I've always traveled for our business. We have a marketing company that deals with restaurants nationwide, and I would always travel and see clients. I was fortunate to have really cool conversations with guys and ladies that have been around the block that knew how to run a restaurant. They had a very specific skill set, and I would do little impromptu lives with them, and that led to, man, I want to see more. And then I realized that, people don't really care as much about marketing as they care about the experience of what those entrepreneurs go through. And here we are. Sometimes I get stuck in the car, sometimes I'm at my office, sometimes I'm in a client's restaurant. But the podcast, Waiting on Fries, tell us, there's two other guys involved in it, correct?
Yeah, of course. I actually started to do a podcast separately from them because they didn't invite me to their podcast, and I was offended. And I said, I'm going to get to market faster than you, and we'll see how it ends up. But sure enough, neither of us did anything for a year, and eventually got a phone call from Justin, who's our partner, and he owns the Smokehouse. So he's got a handful of restaurant experience as well. Yeah. And he said, let's activate this. All three of us are going to do this. So we have a Noom as well, who takes care of the kitchen side of things. And he understands how to cook plates and the different cuts of meat, which I don't understand. I'm a bar guy. I'm a marketing guy. I'm a self-learner. So it's really nice to have the dynamic of the three of us who all kind of have our separate viewpoints and expertise. They definitely don't always agree with me on a lot of things, and that's okay. I'm okay being out here on my own a little bit. I'm sure you've dealt with that throughout life. Oh, but, yeah. That's what the show's really comprised of. And we really discussed that we didn't want to take it too serious and be too full on information. So we scale it back a little bit, and we make it relatable to a lot of the people that are in this restaurant business in general. And that means the servers, the bartenders, the guys in the kitchen, whatever it may be. We're telling a story so that way you can take a gem out of it and apply it to your own restaurant. And we get these gems through talking with reputable restaurants and businesses in the area, and, anything that applies to the restaurant space, really, at the end of the day. And if we can have a conversation with whoever it is and take some of their experiences and hardships that they've gone through and highlight pieces of that, that gives an excellent point or a gem for somebody else to take out to their own restaurant and make sure that they could try to implement it. And I think that we've definitely benefited a handful of guys listening to this podcast. I think we just hit like 10,000 streams, which isn't that much in the grand scheme of things. However, you have to keep in mind that this is an extremely niche market, and people that are listening to this are restaurant owners, they're managers, they're really diehards. They came up in this environment and they don't know what else to do. They wouldn't even, they couldn't change careers at this point. So this is where a source of information comes from,
Yep. Oh, for sure. And it's needed, because I think one of the big issues with entrepreneurs in general, but especially for me, restaurants, is they don't get out of their four walls. Sometimes they're trapped in the kitchen. Their only conversation is with a barback, a busboy, a hostess, a server, a manager, and they're not getting the tips, the tricks, the education they need to go to the next level. And that's where podcasts like yours come in. So you mentioned the three of you. One of the guys is the chef, the meat guy. One of them's an operator, and there's you. I know you're not the chef, you're not the meat guy, but what's something that you've learned in an episode that made you kind of go, I would have thought of that you think a restaurateur would like to know about?
We talk to so many different men and women that are doing this, and we take so many different gems out. I mean, we just had a conversation with Thomas Kelly of Mexico, and what you just said too, where when you're trapped in your four walls, it's actually not beneficial at all. You need to get out and you need to see things. And what I learned actually from Justin, which I didn't realize he was doing, other Justin, that's why everyone just calls me Jay. It makes it a lot easier. I'll say other Justin. What he does is he actually gives a credit to his management to go out and experience different restaurants and report back. What did they do really well? What should we be implementing here? And considering that they understand and know the culture in their own environment, because if you have a restaurant that has no culture, you're missing something. How are you going to keep on building the pillars up? So they go out, they get to experience what's happening outside the walls. They report back to Justin, who doesn't always want to go out and experience what's outside the walls because he's putting out flames and they're about to open up their first restaurant all over again, but as a rebuild across the street in a much larger space. So you don't have time to get out a lot of the times. So, somebody like me who's spent their entire life in restaurants while doing everything outside of restaurants, I've always tried to take the pros out of every single business and look at maybe some missed opportunities. I like that word a lot better than, things somebody's screwing up on. It's a missed opportunity. You didn't realize that there was something there and you should be focusing on it going forward. And the way to do this is before you actually come into this business heavily, you got to jump around a little. You have to see what everyone else is doing. And, that's one of the things that we see a lot. And also guys are scared. Guys are scared to fail. I failed my entire life doing a bunch of different projects that I thought were maybe the great project, the great idea. And once you get slapped in the mouth with failure enough times, you become accustomed to it and it's normal and it's not something you're scared of anymore. Instead, it's how do I succeed in this now venture?
Yep. Yeah, I think you see that sometimes from athletics. They get to a football team, gets late in the season, they're 15-0, and they're like, wow, how are they going to handle adversity? And some coaches say, hey, I'd rather lose a game or two going to the playoffs, with some losses, because, you've got to experience failure. You've got to experience falling down in order to get up. I think one of the negatives you hit on, though, was when you talked about what do we learn from this missed opportunity, is a lot of people in the business space that are, leaders, air quote, don't know how to point that out. They point, oh my gosh, you idiot, you did this, you can't believe you. And now that person that just failed, that failure is much more amplified. Whereas you look at it and go, hey, you know what? We all dropped the ball. Everything happens for a reason. What you learn from it? What can we do better tomorrow?
We had a conversation with Nick DeBona of Bona Bona Ice Cream. He actually just won one of the competitions on the Food Network again. And we were talking about, he hired a gentleman at some point that didn't have complete experience, and he didn't know better either himself, to say, hey, new guy, do a little bit of this. And what this was essentially make vanilla ice cream, which is extremely expensive because vanilla bean prices are through the roof. So the guy wound up screwing up the entire batch of ice cream. And now, going forward, Nick knows maybe next time we have to give somebody an easier task. Let's start doing the simpler things first, and then we'll graduate to showing you how to do the correct methods to create ice cream. Look at a sushi chef, right? In a lot of places, a sushi guy may clean the dishes for a year and a half before he learns how to make rice. And then at that point, making rice, now we could start rolling rolls. You've graduated, my son. My son.
Yep. My son. You remind me of Daniel's son. He's out there wax on, wax off. Yeah,
correct.
yeah, like they say in I think it was Drake's, started from the bottom, now you're here. Yeah. In order to kind
Yeah.
of appreciate where you're at, you've got to be down in the trenches and do stuff. And that takes mistakes. That takes learning from mistakes. That if you don't make mistakes, I think unfortunately you're not gonna learn long term. If you don't fail enough, you're not gonna get a chance to do it.
Oh, totally.
I uh, I coach some entrepreneurs in the marketing space as well on how to build a small business and help restaurants market better. And I was telling a couple of them one time. He said, I was, how many people did you go talk to last month? Oh, I talked to 3. I said, well, here's the problem. You need to talk to 20 because you talked to 3, you didn't get enough swings at the bat to understand what they need and what they don't need. You talk to 3 people. You talk to 20, you get a little more insight. Like I'm down here this week. We're getting ready. We have an appointment in about an hour that I fly out. 14 meetings with restaurant owners in 3 days. That helps you get your pulse on what is needed and what's not needed in this region. But the same thing in any type of business, like you're talking about, getting those experience, getting your lumps in inside the 4 walls. Uh, Talking about the marketing side of it, you're the bar guy, you're the person that talks to a lot of people. I can tell your energy that you really get off on understanding people and probably getting them into the place. It's 2021. A lot of restaurants around the country are licking their wounds and saying, okay, how do we restart this thing? What would be some marketing advice that you would give going into this year that people can do to start getting a little more ahead and get ready for the summer?
It's hard to just say that one advice travels across all the regions because that's simply not true.
Yep.
What works in maybe the Northeast territories of New York, tri-state area where there's heavy population density might not work somewhere in the Midwest, right? Where it's a little bit quieter. One of the things that we don't really do here is BOGO, buy one, get one, is not necessarily something that we can do. So we get a little bit more creative. I mean, we are able to issue buybacks to people in our bars and restaurants. And, it's funny when you look at the bar or bartenders in general, and you could tell the people that are seasoned in this business and understand the mechanics of bartending and keeping somebody in their seat and the real estate part of things versus somebody that's just here to get paid. And they don't enjoy having the conversations with the bar guests that come in. And I just, I could see that off the bat. And I go, the hell are you doing in this business if you're not even having an actual conversation? If you haven't learned something about every single one of your bar guests, why the fuck are they coming back? Like, there's no reason for them to come back. And that's one of the things where I love having these conversations. For instance, and I'll go back to the marketing in a second, I swear. I met a gentleman that was a specialist in capturing animals. It was the animal control, essentially. He had his own business. And we talked one morning when I was doing the morning shifts in a bar, still earning my keep. And I met him. I took his card and we talked. I'd always set him up with his drink every time he came in. Sure enough, I go out to Long Island and a critter broke into my grandparents' house, which was vacant. And first thing I do is find the card and I call him. I go, hey, it's Jay from the bar. Crazy enough, we just talked about it. I've got a problem here. And he was able to help me out, identify the critter based on the pictures, what I should do. And, we have so many connections as bartenders. And if you're not using it and you're not learning what everyone else is doing, that's your first mistake because you can't put somebody behind the bar that doesn't want to talk to people. You need to put somebody behind the bar that's not on their phone. They want to have the conversation and they thoroughly enjoy the conversation. So if you haven't done that, it doesn't matter what marketing you're about to do because nothing is going to work. So identify your key players.
And that is huge because you're exactly right. If you don't want to be here, why are you here? And if you're not taking pride in understanding today, myself and Chip ate at a Buffalo Wings and Rings down here. It's a franchise out of Cincinnati. They've got good product. We're looking for some cool wings. We're sitting on the patio. The guy next to us, I was giving him a hard time because he ordered a salad instead of buffalo wings. I'm just giving him a hard time. And he's like, oh, I eat here 4 days a week. I'm like, oh, okay, you get a pass. You probably have wings. And he's like, yeah, we get to talking. And the lady comes out. He knew her name. He knew the server really well. He's talking about their bar specials. He's like, yeah, we come here 4 days a week. And you can tell the reason he comes there 4 days a week is he feels like part of the family. Everybody there knew his name. They were joking with him. And that's, I think, a missed component because there's a guy that had maybe he not had that conversation with the bartenders and servers early on, had they not realized what he did for a living, had conversation, built a rapport, his 4 visits a week might be 1 visit every 2 weeks, every month, and he's going somewhere else that maybe wasn't looking at their phone every 5 seconds, wasn't flirting with somebody else in the business. It was actually taking their craft seriously.
Yeah, I mean, it's super important to be doing that. And especially, you know, as a bartender, you go into a space, you don't always fully know what it's capable of producing income for you, right? You don't have ownership in the game. You're really behind the bar, and you are your own boss in a lot of senses. You're developing clientele, you're bringing clientele in. And if you're not, then you're not going to eat. You're not going to make money. You can't expect the bar itself to fulfill everything for you. One of the things we used to do back in the day was actually go to the college campuses, and this is working in a college bar, go to all the college campuses. I do graphic design work. I would print out flyers, hand them on every single car in that parking lot. The first that we did it actually a little bit too late. We did it the same day that we were having the first party, which was our fault. But that following week, the place was packed on a Wednesday night, and it's because we did the legwork. Did my bosses pay me money to go do that? No, not a dime. That money to print the flyers came out of my pocket. I made it all back that night, plus a lot, right? Because you have to do the legwork. You can't always just expect management who's already doing a million different things at once. Maybe they don't have the know-how. So in the bar world, we are our own bosses as long as we stick to the code of whatever the management team needs and whatever the bar actually needs. But you're the one that brings in your own business. So you know, that's a prime thing that needs to be done by all bartenders, in my opinion.
Yep. Grassroots marketing. You know, I always tell people in the marketing world, in the sales world, we call it RGAs, revenue generating activities. What activity did you do today that's going to generate activities? And I tell restaurant owners all the time, like, you're a salesperson. Your bartender's a salesperson. Your host is a salesperson. Your server. How many people did you try and sell something to today, whether it's indirectly or directly? And in that case, you as a bartender getting out there and realizing that the more people that come to that night you're there, the more money you make. The more money you make, the happier you are. So, you know what? I'll invest, 20, 30, 40 bucks in some flyers and make a couple $100 more in tips. Love it.
Correct. I'm very analytical with things. I look at things very non-emotionally. Sorry to my girlfriend many times. I apologize always. Not very emotional. I look at the statistics. I look at the algorithms. I look at the formulas for things. And to me, that really helps decipher what idea may create the most return on investment for what you do and what maybe will not give you as much return. So maybe you should put that on the back end of your to-do list. So TME, time, movement, energy, something I definitely live by. And how much time is it going to take me to accomplish the task? How much movement is it going to take for me to do the task? And energy. What am I going to get out of this as a result? So my day is formulated by that essentially all the time without even thinking about it. And to me, that's how you get tasks done that are impactful. And you need to race to create these things.
So I'm typing that on here. TME. Time,
movement, energy.
I love it. Never heard that before.
That actually came from one of my bar guests. I didn't know the term for it. I didn't know the name of it, but he rattled it off the moment I explained to him how I formulate my day. And I said, Ryan, this is unbelievable. I've been doing this my whole life. I didn't even know there was a name for it, naturally. So, as we're going back into the summertime, all of the restaurants are gearing up to get active again, to be able to put a lot more people in the seats, in these areas where we have a lot of population density. We have to adhere to a lot of rules. Florida, on the other hand, you could almost go do whatever you want down in Florida and there's no problem. So, regionally, everything is a little bit different. And here where we do have to separate people, we have to put time limits on tables for an hour and a half to be courteous of others that want to come in and sit and eat. And also, there's nothing that you need to be in a seat for over an hour and a half for. Maybe if you're trying to watch a game, it's understandable, but we're in a different kind of time right now. And we have to make sure that the line's completely moving into the building and we can funnel people out and make the most out of, their trip, their real estate. As far as the bar, though, too, in typical times, the bar is real estate and you would never want it to sit empty. I would utilize my buybacks to keep people in their seats to give enough time for the next person to sit down because nobody wants to be the first one at a cold bar. Oh, yeah. And if they see that, why is this the place to go to? I had an ex-boss who used to work in Hoboken, and he would actually, I'm not saying to do this for anybody, but he would hire escorts to come sit at the bar to bring guys in That way they'd sit at the bar. And he said, I don't care what you do. You just cannot leave for 2 hours.
Yep.
They filled the seats.
It's,
ethical? Who knows?
Well, I mean, you probably know this. A lot of people might not know this. You go to any massive trade show, there's a lot of hired talent, male and female, depending on the show.
Sure.
In those, I've got a couple friends of mine that are pretty suave, good-looking dudes in their 20s that you do modeling gigs, and their modeling gigs are working booths at trade shows that have a lot of female buyers. The one guy was telling me a joke that cracked me up because I didn't know it existed a long time ago. He worked a show where teachers were coming to, and it's like, he was the eye candy. He was the one that stopped people coming in the booth, and I'm like, wow, if they only knew how this guy had no clue what they were talking about. But you know what? It was people stop at the booth, they look at the display, they get literature. It's no different than a bar.
Completely. And you're right on the head with that. And, these places that are going back into the summer season here, they're going to see a handful of people coming back out again. For us, keep in mind, everybody's barred inside when it's winter because, like you said, it's cold. They're not looking to walk around on the streets. They're not gallivanting. They're hanging out indoors. They're doing their to-go orders. They're getting orders brought to their houses. They're not really hanging out in the bar in those same numbers. And I think Justin actually referenced in one of the podcasts recently that in August, a time where he was typically a little bit slower, he wound up having his best numbers he's ever had during COVID, where we're so locked down. And that's insane. And of course, you will agree that everybody's takeout business is up double digits, across the board as far as what they normally do. And I think those numbers will sustain a little bit as they kind of drop off very, very slowly. But I think that people are going to start doing a lot more deliveries in the restaurants as well. So we'll see that happen, I'm sure.
Yeah, I actually said that about this time last year. I was talking to a couple clients, and people were hesitant to embrace third party. I said, guys, it's coming. It's here. You better embrace it. Figure out a way to make it work. I said, because I can tell you, when my buddy realized recently, and this was about a year ago, I said, when he realized he could sit on his sofa with his feet propped up and order his favorite buffalo wings from the place down the street, pay a $4 or $5 premium, he's like, I'll take that. I can sit here in my boxers and watch TV. I don't have to go anywhere. It's not going anywhere. But I'll say this from a restaurant standpoint. I heard this from a client of mine recently. It's genius. It makes sense, but I wonder how many people are doing it. He has went to friends' houses, and he has had them order third party from his restaurant. He wants to see how it shows up. He wants to make sure the same love and care is going into that order as the person sitting at the restaurant. He also wants to make sure that what he ordered held up correctly. He's like, Matt, I've ordered my entire menu at friend's house and a third party. And because of that, we have eliminated about 7 items because we want somebody to keep reordering. And if they get a crappy product, they ain't got to reorder.
Yeah, you're right on the money with that. To refer back to Smokehouse again, and with what Justin does in his restaurant is he's been building out his own takeout and delivery driver presence for before the pandemic even happened. So he was fortunate enough to have a leg up when it did happen, where he wasn't just dependent on Uber showing up. People were already trained to go on the website, put their order in. It would come through the kitchen automatically. And just the whole service would just be expedited. And he knew that by having a driver that was able to take it to the house, that it would travel far better. And with that said, you look at different places that are utilizing these third-party delivery spots. It can be dangerous because they're not really out there with the same love and care. These guys are just collecting a paycheck, a little bit of the tip on top, whatever it is for DoorDash, Uber. We recently dealt with my girlfriend's from San Diego. Now she's on the East Coast. Hustle's a little bit different out here. So she called one of the pizza spots. I should say joint. It's a pizza joint. It's been there for a long time. Old guys running this thing, old Italian guys. And I know the place because I trust it very well. And I asked her to call them and order on our way over to a friend's house so we could just pick it up in time. By the time we got there, she ordered on digitally through the website, quote unquote, from Google. We got there and the guy said, I don't have your order. I don't know what you're talking about. So a third party actually hijacked the Google listing, took it over, took the money. They were supposed to call in the order, and then they make their delivery fee or whatnot. So we had to fight it with the credit card company. And I went in there and I said, listen, dude, I'm in this business. I'm not mad whatsoever. I understand my girlfriend's frustration. However, you have a duty to make sure that your listings aren't being hijacked, because he said this was the second time it happened that somebody brought this up. And he just seemed very uncaring about it. Just like, I don't know what to tell you. And I said, this is your business. This is a local business in the community. Something is happening here, and you need to take responsibility to rectify it. And I'm not angry again. I'm not yelling at you. I'm just telling you from somebody in this business, you know? Yep. So it's crazy to see what's happening with the third party. Drizzly was just purchased from Uber for like $1 billion or something like that. Some absurd number. They deliver alcohol. My girlfriend's used it a handful of times during the pandemic. So what you say, delivery is here to stay, it's not going anywhere. You know, we could get alcohol delivered. Bacardi actually sent her a bottle for one of the events that they were doing pretty recently too. Knock at the front door, show me ID, bottle's yours, all paid for. Nobody had to do anything. It was amazing.
Wow.
It's a lot different when it's alcohol.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. A little different. I appreciate your insight. Appreciate having a conversation with you. I know you got things happening. Is waitingonfriespodcast.com the best way to reach you guys, to follow the podcast and get in touch?
Yeah, I mean, you could just put that in on Apple Music. I don't even know what's out there now, right? However you listen to your podcast, Waiting on Fries, pop right up, of course. I think we're up to like 35 episodes now, and we try to differentiate every single story that we tell. That way nothing's exactly the same. I mean, these guys have interesting stories out here. They're building brands. You know, these are things that you're going to see in the future globally, possibly, with some of the guys that we speak to. It's insane to just watch people's stories unfold right in front of you, you know?
Yep. Oh, I love it. Love it. And keep up the good work. Can't wait to one day meet you in person, but make sure if you're watching, tune in to Waiting on Fries podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Play, Google Play, whatever they're all called. You'll find it. Look it up, grab some fries, listen to the podcast. Thank you, other Justin, or Jay, as you said they call you. We'll see you around.
Yes. Thank you very much.